If you thought their music was wild, wait till you hear about their marriages, or what became of the marriages, because these are the craziest divorces in rock and roll history. So if you thought your marriage was like walking a tightrope, some of these are more like walking on floss, impossible and stupid and hilarious. These weren't just splits, they were chart-topping chaos, and just when you think it can't get any messier, it does. Elvis and Priscilla Presley. Elvis first met Priscilla in 1959 when she was just, yikes, 14, and he was stationed in Germany during his army service.
Falling in love with you.
Yeah, 14. And while her parents were understandably hesitant, maybe not enough, the king of rock and roll, well, he had a way of getting what he wanted. And before long, Priscilla was being groomed for Graceland, and by the time she was 17, she moved into that Memphis mansion. Now, the promise was that the relationship would remain chaste until marriage. Whether that held true or not remains a topic of debate. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
Who makes my heart beat like thunder?
Their 1967 wedding was short and sweet, almost suspiciously so, held in Las Vegas with the reception lasting just 90 minutes. But for a moment, they looked like the American dream. Elvis in his peak pompadour phase, Priscilla in a beehive that brushed the heavens. The two were iconic together. She was soft-spoken glam and he was glittering swagger, but beneath the rhinestones and the high collars, trouble was brewing. Cause Elvis was a bit cuckoo. He reportedly insisted that Priscilla stay pristine and untouched. His fantasy muse, not a real woman with her own identity, you know, his wife. And meanwhile, he took his liberties elsewhere, with rumored flings including Anne Margaret and countless other co-stars. Priscilla eventually found herself feeling isolated and ornamental, a mannequin in Graceland, while Elvis unraveled under the weight of fame, prescription drugs, and paranoia. But finally, she began to assert herself, studying karate and eventually falling in love with her instructor, Mike Stone. And so in 1972, Priscilla told Elvis she was leaving him, an emotional blow that left him devastated. Their divorce was finalized in 1973, and though the proceedings were surprisingly amicable on paper, emotionally it was the beginning of the end. Elvis gave her a whole lot in the settlement: houses, child support, a chunk of cash, insisting that he still loved her, but he never really recovered from losing her.
Give me one more chance to keep you satisfied.
In the years that followed, Priscilla grew into a powerful businesswoman, while Elvis descended further into addiction and seclusion. He died just 4 years later in 1977. Their relationship was both a fantasy and a tragedy. You could say that Can't Help Falling in Love was the beginning, and Suspicious Minds, well, that spelled the end. It was a royal romance, and like so many royal tales, it didn't end with a happily ever after, but it did leave an imprint on pop culture forever. George Harrison and Pattie Boyd. When George Harrison met Pattie Boyd on the set of A Hard Day's Night in 1964, it was Beatlemania at full tilt.
Got my mind set on you, and this time I know it's...
And she was a doe-eyed model with the kind of ethereal beauty that could stop time. George asked her out that same day. She said no, and then changed her mind. Within 2 years, they were married. Then they became one of the most photographed and fawned over couples of that era. But behind the flower child glow and Carnaby Street cool, things were so complicated. George was the quiet Beatle, but their marriage was anything but. The couple lived in Friar Park, a Gothic mansion that felt plucked from a Victorian fever dream, filled with incense, sitars, and mysticism. In and Pattie Boyd inspired one of George's most romantic and best songs ever with Something. Even Frank Sinatra once called that the greatest love song of the last 50 years.
I believe in how.
But devotion can curdle with distance, especially when your husband is more interested in chanting with the Maharishi than connecting at home. Pattie Boyd later revealed that George was emotionally remote, increasingly withdrawn, and often unfaithful, most notably with Ringo Starr's wife, Maureen.
While my guitar gently weeps.
And then there was Eric Clapton, Harrison's best friend. He fell hard for Pattie Boyd. He wrote tortured letters, poured his soul into songs, and eventually channeled his obsession into Layla, one of the most anguished guitar riffs ever recorded. Pattie resisted, until she didn't. The emotional tug-of-war culminated in her leaving George in 1974 and marrying Eric in 1979. But incredibly, George didn't go full rock revenge mode. Instead, he cracked jokes about it and remained weirdly zen, even inviting them both to parties. Eric and George would later refer to themselves as husbands-in-law. You can't make this stuff up. The divorce wasn't flashy, but the emotional carnage was unmistakable, echoed forever in the grooves of records from three of rock's most iconic figures. And while Pattie was more than a muse, the music her heartbreak inspired might be the most dramatic rock and roll playlist ever created.
Give me love, give me peace on earth, give me life.
Eddie Van Halen and Valerie Bertinelli. When Eddie Van Halen met Valerie Bertinelli in 1980, it was the ultimate opposites-attract fantasy. He was the wild guitar genius who turned solos into electricity, and she was the wholesome TV darling from One Day at a Time. With the cute dimples, the charm, and a girl next door glow. They met after she saw him on an album cover and had her brothers arrange a backstage meetup. Within a year, they were married, and fans just couldn't believe it. A hard-partying rocker and a squeaky clean sitcom star tying the knot. Hey, what could go wrong? Well, everything and nothing all at once. Behind the scenes, there was real love. They laughed constantly, they finished each other's sentences in sandwiches, and they protected each other fiercely. But the pressures of fame, combined with Eddie's deepening addiction to alcohol and the white stuff, it began to chip away at the fairy tale. Valerie has since admitted to her own struggles during that time, trying to fix him, enabling, ignoring the red flags. She wasn't the naive ingenue people imagined. She was a woman quietly drowning in a relationship defined by talent and turmoil. And by the late 90s, their marriage was in tatters. Eddie's health was deteriorating. He'd go on to lose part of his tongue to cancer. And Valerie, well, she had reached a breaking point, and they separated in 2001 and finalized a divorce in 2007. But there was no venom, no scorched earth courtroom drama, just two people who loved each other but couldn't survive the chaos. Valerie even held his hand as he passed away in 2020, writing afterward that her, quote, love for him never died. This was a breakup that represented the collision of two very different kinds of fame and the quiet devastation addiction can leave behind. Axl Rose and Erin Everly. When Axl Rose first laid eyes on Erin Everly in the mid-'80s, he was still clawing his way to the top with Guns N' Roses. She was the daughter of rock royalty, Don Everly of the Everly Brothers. They met at a party and dove headfirst into a volatile, obsessive relationship that burned white hot from the start. Erin became the muse for Sweet Child of Mine, arguably one of the most romantic and iconic power ballads of the decade. But that tenderness masked something far more disturbing underneath. Theirs was a relationship built on instability and fear. According to Erin, Axl once showed up at her house with a gun and threatened to turn it on himself if she didn't marry him. I mean, I guess that's a proposal. And so they eloped in Las Vegas in 1990. But by 91, the marriage had already imploded. Erin filed for annulment just months in, citing physical and emotional abuse. Lawsuits followed. Axl was accused of domestic violence not only by Erin, but later by other women. Painting a pattern of deeply troubling behavior that was hard to ignore, even amid the glam and guitar solos. And yet for years, Erin remained a mystery figure in the band's mythology, rarely speaking publicly, almost ghost-like in the wake of such a loud, aggressive breakup. When she finally broke her silence in the mid-90s, her account was haunting. A young woman swept up in the chaos of a rock star at the height of his fame and fury. And through it all, Sweet Child of Mine continued to play on the radios all around the world. A song that now sounded a bit more like a warning siren. Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson. It started like a rock ballad on Fast Forward. Pamela Anderson had just wrapped a trip to Cancun when Tommy Lee, Motley Crue's wildest member, which is sure saying something, called her hotel room out of nowhere.
Just good times. Just good times.
They'd met briefly before, but he was smitten, and 6 weeks later they were married on a beach in Mexico. She wore a bikini, mwah. He wore swim trunks, cool. The honeymoon was wild, romantic, and unbeknownst to them, about to become the most infamous home video in rock and roll history.
Just to see how much you can take. It's nothing.
Their relationship was a thunderstorm of passion, chaos, and codependency. On one hand, they couldn't keep their hands off each other, but on the other, they couldn't go a week without a tabloid-worthy fight. That leaked honeymoon tape, stolen from their safe and distributed without their consent, turned them into a new kind of celebrity couple. The rock star and the pinup, trapped in a scandal that they couldn't escape.
See my faith every single time I try. No one is on my side. Don't let me try.
Lawsuits flew, reputations were shattered, and the video unfortunately helped launch the modern era of voyeuristic fame. But that was just one chapter. There were arrests, a jail sentence for Tommy after a domestic violence incident, and multiple breakups followed by equally impulsive reconciliations.
Take me away.
They had 2 sons and tried to make it work more than once, but their love was a roller coaster without breaks. Years later, Pamela would call him the love of her life, and Tommy Lee would echo the sentiment. But the damage was done. Their story had burned too hot, too fast, with way too much outside noise.
Been through this before. There's nothing new.
It wasn't just a rock and roll divorce. It was a media phenomenon, messy enough to spawn miniseries and documentaries even decades later. And if you've seen any of those, like Pam and Tommy from 2022, let me know your thoughts on the matter. Was the miniseries good? Do you feel bad for Pamela? Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet. Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet weren't just a couple, they were more like a vibe. When they met backstage at a New Edition concert in 1985, Lisa was already America's alt-it girl thanks to The Cosby Show. And Lenny, well, he was a musician kinda struggling, going by the name Romeo Blue. Their connection was instant, electric, and felt almost fated, and within a few years they were married in a secret Vegas ceremony in 1987. The couple welcomed their daughter Zoe the following year. The world didn't just admire them, they envied them. They redefined cool. Barefoot in velvet, deeply creative and possibly beautiful, they were both obsessed with music, art, and self-expression. But while the outside world saw a spiritual match made in dreadlocked heaven, there were cracks in the dream.
I just can't get you off of my mind.
First, fame hit Lenny fast. His debut album, Let Love Rule, was a critical success, but it was that second album, Mama Said, that captured the heartbreak he was living through behind the scenes.
We gotta let love rule.
That pain, it came directly from the unraveling of their marriage. Lisa, meanwhile, was going through her own metamorphosis, kinda separating from that Cosby image and stepping into something more raw, mysterious, and fiercely independent. Creative differences, wild rumors, and the pressures of raising a child while their stars were rising in opposite directions strained their bond. And Lisa filed for divorce in 1993. And while both have always maintained public respect for one another, they've even appeared at events together in later years, you can feel the ache in Lenny's music from that era. It ain't over till it's over. That's the sound of someone trying to will a broken relationship back to life with a falsetto and a prayer. What followed wasn't scandalous in the traditional tabloid sense. There was no courtroom battles or messy exposés, but it was quietly devastating. Their love was so magnetic and soulful that when it ended, it felt like something celestial had blinked out. And yet, as far as breakups go, this was just a warm-up.
Always left out in the rain. Is there a chance that we can make it?
Ike and Tina Turner. When Tina first met Ike in the late 1950s, she was just a teenager named Anime Bullock, and he was already an established musician with a reputation for blazing guitar work and bandleader bravado.
I want every chunk of you for me.
He asked, she joined the group, and almost overnight became the undeniable star. Their chemistry on stage was electric. She was a hurricane in heels, and he was the man orchestrating the storm.
Church house, gin house, schoolhouse, outhouse.
But offstage, it was a very difficult dynamic, controlling, violent, and built on fear. They married in 1962, but Tina would later reveal that it was more like a trap than a union. Ike was physically and psychologically abusive for years, a pattern that intensified as their fame grew. They were one of the most celebrated duos in rock and soul, tearing through hits like Proud Mary and River Deep Mountain High. But behind the sequins and spinning dance moves, Tina was living in terror.
You're gonna find some people who live. You don't have to worry if you got no money. The people on the river.
She suffered beatings, emotional manipulation, and isolation. She tried to leave multiple times. The final straw came in 1976, when after a brutal fight en route to a Dallas hotel, she fled in the middle of the night with just 36 cents and a mobile gas card in her pocket.
Do what you want me to do. I'm your private dancer.
The divorce was finalized in 1978, and Tina asked for almost nothing. No money, no property, no royalties. She wanted just one thing. She wanted to keep the name Tina Turner, and she won.
Left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day.
From there, she rebuilt her life and career from the ground up, becoming one of the greatest solo performers in music history. Ike, on the other hard hand, spiraled deeper into addiction and legal trouble, and he died in 2007. Tina's eventual success wasn't just a comeback, it was a reclamation of power and identity that inspired millions. Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love. Kurt Cobain met Courtney Love in 1990 at a nightclub in Portland, and it wasn't long before sparks and syringes flew. He was the reluctant voice of a generation, grungy and fragile. She was the loud, volatile punk queen of Hole. Their connection was immediate, messy, and strangely magnetic. They married in 1992 on a beach in Hawaii. Kurt in pajamas, Courtney in a lace dress once worn by Frances Farmer, and just a few months later, their daughter Frances Bean was born into a whirlwind of tabloid scrutiny. You see, their love story was inseparable from their addictions. They bonded over music, drama, and the big H, smack. So much so that Vanity Fair ran a now infamous profile alleging that Courtney had used drugs while pregnant. Both denied it, but the damage was done. Child Protective Services got involved, and their parenting came under public siege. Despite the chaos, though, they also championed each other's art. Courtney claimed that heart-shaped box was inspired by her, and Kurt reportedly said she was one of the few people who truly understood him. But the darkness in their relationship wasn't just artistic, it was all-consuming.
When I wake up in my makeup, have you ever felt so
When Kurt died in 1994, Courtney became both widow and lightning rod. Grief, accusations, and conspiracy theories flooded the media. Fans questioned her influence, some absurdly blaming her for his death. While others rallied around her as a tragic survivor. The legal battles that followed were very, very ugly. Courtney fought over Nirvana's legacy, royalties, and control of Kurt's unreleased material.
The sun don't ever shine, I would shiver the whole.
She feuded with surviving bandmates, lost and regained custody of Frances Bean, and cycled through lawsuits and public meltdowns. It was less a clean break than a decades-long detonation. Their relationship was part Shakespearean tragedy, part grunge opera, filled with raw poetry, dangerous highs, and a love that couldn't be untangled from destruction.
I see you every night, free.
Mick Jagger and Jerry Hall. Mick Jagger and Jerry Hall were the unofficial king and queen of rock and roll glam. They met in 1976 at a dinner party. Jerry was already a Texan-born supermodel with legs that seemed to defy gravity. And Mick was, well, Mick. Their chemistry was instant, electric, and impossible to miss. And over the next 2 decades, they became the ultimate power couple, strutting through Studio 54, beach houses in Mystique, and front rows of fashion shows like royalty in leather pants. Despite the rock and roll chaos, their life together looked at times almost domestic. They had 4 children, posed for Vanity Fair, and even had what appeared to be a commitment ceremony in Bali in 1990. Jerry gave Mick a sense of grounding, at least publicly, but behind closed doors, the Rolling Stones frontman didn't exactly hang up his groupie charming ways. Infidelity was a constant shadow. The final blow came in 1999 when Jerry discovered that Mick had allegedly fathered a child with Brazilian model Luciana Murad. So Hall filed for divorce. But here's the twist, that ceremony in Bali wasn't legally binding under British or Indonesian law. So technically, there was nothing to divorce.
Yes, and the storm is threatening my bird.
But still, their split was far from symbolic. Jerry was furious, Mick was evasive, and the tabloids had a field day. She later said that the breakup sent her into a very deep depression, but it also kinda freed her. Jerry went on to find stability and eventually married Rupert Murdoch, of all people, while Mick continued being, well, Mick. But if a rock star dodging divorce with a technicality seems wild, the next couple on this list turned their personal split into a courtroom drama. With variety show leftovers, bitter lawsuits, and a love that curdled in front of a national TV audience. But they still had to keep smiling through the theme song.
So far, I wanna crash the car, I wanna land right on my face. I said, don't.
Sonny and Cher. They began as an unlikely duo in the 1960s. He was the ambitious producer with a mop of dark hair and a serious Napoleon complex. And she was the teenager with the deep, haunting voice and the cheekbones that could cut glass.
That will stay just that way till the day comes along.
Sonny and Cher simply took the world by storm, with I Got You Babe, a love anthem so inseparable from their image that it felt more like a vow than a song.
Babe, I got you, babe.
And together they were campy, they were charming, and they were unstoppable. On stage, on the charts, and eventually on their own hit TV show. But while their love bloomed in front of an audience and a camera, it began to unravel just off set. Sonny was the one who called the shots, both creatively and financially, and Cher increasingly felt like a puppet in her own life. She later said she didn't even realize she was married under California community property law until the divorce proceedings. By the mid-70s, the relationship had become all business and no bliss, and Cher had fallen for another man, Greg Allman. But Sonny wasn't about to let go quietly. When she tried to leave, he sued her for breach of contract, arguing she couldn't pursue a solo career or make TV appearances without him. In response, Cher fired back with a lawsuit of her own, seeking to dissolve the business partnership and their marriage once and for all. The divorce was finalized in 1975, but they couldn't fully escape each other. Their finances were so entangled that even after they split, they were forced to make awkward joint appearances. But still, in time, the bitterness softened into something like affection. When they reunited on the David Letterman show in 1987 to sing I Got You Babe one last time, it wasn't just nostalgic, it was weirdly tender. Like two people who had survived a storm and were finally dry and fully processed.
I got you to hold me tight. I got you to walk with me.
Oof, who needs soap operas when real-life rock stars are actually living out these wild love stories? So, which of these breakups shocked you most? Do you remember where you were when one of these headlines hit the papers? Which couple was your favorite when together? And which did you just know was gonna end in a fiery divorce worthy of tabloid glory? Get down in the comments section and let us know. And if I forgot a wild rock and roll divorce, please tell me which ones. We could always make a round 2. If you enjoyed our settlement today, please pay your alimony by simply hitting that thumbs up icon. It helps our channel more than you might know. And if you're not subscribed, make sure you do that so you always get the invite to our ceremonies. But most importantly, from all of us here at Do You Remember, thanks so much for watching. Keep that volume up because the drama never really ends. Peace, y'all.